So when Ron first approached me about speaking tonight about transformation and community, my first thought was, I don't know, I'm more of an improviser. Uh, how am I going to put together a scripted 10 to 17 minute talk about community and transformation? I might have to have a transformation of my own. I needed help. So I wanted to find someone who could help me organize my thoughts, put them down on paper, and be able to stand up here and express them. I needed a coach who is here tonight, actually, undoubtedly holding her breath with her fingers crossed, um, beaming me some good juju. So with her help, I'm going to relate to you the only stories that I know of transformation in community, those of my own, about cartooning and drumming. I'm a cartoonist and a musician. I've been doing both of those things for over 50 years. They are every bit a part of who I am and what I perceive as the reasons for why I'm here. Well, not here specifically, but the big here. That sounds kind of simplistic. When I told her what I wanted to do was come out here and let everyone know that they should just be who they were meant to be, she was like, what do you mean? Like the Nike commercial? That Army be all you can be slogan? And I was like, no, I don't want people to just do it. I want them to just be it. As a cartoonist, I'm always trying to look for the least amount of dialogue that I can use to get my point across. Just be it, those three little words is pretty much what I want you to get out of this, and I could leave now, and if you got the just be it part, that'd be okay. But I've got, I don't know, 11 more minutes, so I'm just gonna keep talking. Looking back, I can see I was born to drum and draw, but as a kid, there was no way I could really know that. I mean, I loved coloring books, and I loved Mad Magazine, and there was always music playing in our house. But as far back as I can remember, I was drawing. In elementary school, some friends of mine and I, we would pass around these huge sheets of paper, and we would draw these big battle scenes with tanks and troop movements and explosions and planes and tracer bullets. They were really incredible drawings, and I wish I could show you one of them. But unfortunately, they were all lost in the war. Okay. This was my first attempt at a comic strip. Maybe fourth or fifth grade, something like that. And as you can see, I hadn't quite gotten over my battle scene aggression issues yet. Now, this was the cover of a playbill for children's theater that I was also in. I was cast as the evil older brother, which my younger brother can totally verify was typecasting. As I got older, I wanted to try my hand at recurring characters, like in a real comic strip. But I needed something simple to draw because I have a really hard time drawing the same thing twice. So I came up with clams. Ooh, come back. Clams. Now, I know I ripped this off from Johnny Hart's BC comic strip, but they say that ripoff is the sincerest form of flattery. So this is me and my friends throwing a Frisbee around behind Asheville High when we were supposed to be in art class drawing pictures. And the irony of this tickles me to this day. I just love that fact. And I'm actually still in touch with a couple of those people, even today, after 40 years or so. I would try to introduce also sometimes some philosophy into my clam cartoons. This, I must have been up on the parkway somewhere, or maybe up on a bald Roan Mountain or something like that. I remember I was just overcome with the amazing beauty and wonder of nature. I will state that there were no drugs used or harmed in the making of this cartoon. At least that's what I told my stepdaughter. Okay. And I would put clams in really weird, different situations. This was a band of clams that I put together. The name of this band was, wait for it, Chowder. And I even drew famous personalities as clams. Yeah, I know. My parents were supportive of me, relatively speaking. Uh, you know, relatively, parents, okay. My mom was a do-what-you-love person. My dad was a, well, that's great, son, but what are you going to do for money kind of guy. And I absorbed these views, both of these views, because they were my parents. They were practically my sources of everything. And in absorbing those views, I built a wall in my heart and my spirit that I sometimes still struggle to climb over. I continued to draw in college and beyond, but there was always that little voice in my head saying, you're not good enough, you won't get anywhere, what are you going to do for money? How are you going to pay your bills? And I'd see my dad's face, and I'd hear his voice, and I'd remember how he gave up most of his theatrical ambitions to support his family. Well, his unhappiness, however well he tried to hide it from us, was not what I wanted for me. Now, most people would find another more lucrative side profession to pay their bills and enable them to pursue their artistic endeavors. Sorry, Dad. My other passion was music, listening to it and playing it. The Beatles on Ed Sullivan. Where were you then moment? Well, I was glued to the TV and I was just bursting with that incredible sound. The Beatles were actually the external force that accelerated my passion for music through the roof, and I imagine for millions of other kids around the world. I started on ukulele. I graduated to my grandfather's classical guitar that we had hanging around the house, and eventually I bought a guitar of my own, I bought better guitars, and I started playing with other people. I became an okay rhythm guitarist. I even wrote a few songs, but I was really playing the drums on the guitar. I just didn't know that at the time. So over time, clams gave way to commentary, and the guitar wasn't everything that I was hearing in my head, but I'd also catch myself thinking, maybe I should have gone to welding school. It turns out the tension of these two forces operating within me was actually the prerequisite, the catalyst for transformation. Now, how many of you are familiar with the Saturn transit? Now, this being Asheville, I imagine most, if not all of you, but for those of you who aren't, the Saturn transit or Saturn return is when the planet Saturn comes back through your astrological birth house, somewhere around your 27th birthday, and it denotes a time of change and choices. When my Saturn return happened, I'd been foundering. I'd draw cartoons for 6 months and I wouldn't touch an instrument. And then the next 6 months, I'd play my guitar every day, but I would never sit down at my drawing table. It was back and forth, and the big question became, am I going to have to focus on only one of these things if I'm going to get anywhere? Am I going to have to drop one? Is it cartooning or is it music? Which was the most unique to me, which had the best chance of success, and maybe most importantly, what was going to make me the happiest? Or should I just go to trade school and become a solvent, unhappy member of society? My choice, my transformation, wasn't some cataclysmic shifting of the continents. It was the slow realization that I was pursuing these two art forms because I was those two art forms. They were me. They were who I was, how I expressed myself, how I related to the world, and where my talents lay. Who was I to say that my life wasn't big enough to handle both of those things? So I kept drawing and playing. I got cartoons in college textbooks, on CD covers for internationally known jazz artists, websites, private cartoon commissions. I played more and more. I bought better guitars. I worked in bands, and I started making money playing music. Well, as in any endeavor, there's been highs and lows, and I'm going to relate some of those to you. Now, this was perhaps the lowest part of my cartooning career yet. Okay, this cartoon got me in a lot of hot water. I didn't quite draw it the best way that I should have to get my point across, and thanks to the internet, I got worldwide condemnation. What I was trying to say, my point was that in a post-racial society, the black man, our president, was trying to stop the corporate CEOs, the white men, from stealing from us, as opposed to the black man stealing from the white man. Well, I got interviewed by a black journalist in Oakland, a corporate coach in New York City, and even a college professor in Sydney, Australia. After I explained to them what I was trying to say, they were like, oh, yeah, I get it now. That's really right on. But man, the hate and invective that I got sent my way, I almost quit cartooning. My wife at the time sat me down and she said, and I quote, "You need to grow a pair. And you need to thicken your skin because there's going to always be people who disagree with you, sometimes vehemently. But if you're not going to let your dad stop you, why would you let some random stranger's rant stop you? And please, just don't draw Mohammed, okay?" So here's a high point. This cartoon got shared by George Takei, the king of Facebook. He has millions of followers, and this got 11,000 likes, 4,000 shares, and almost 600 comments. And he credited me by name, which I'm told is not something that he does very often. And then just recently, this cartoon, which I did for the Asheville Citizen-Times, when Trump was coming to town, this got retweeted by the USA Today, and they have over 2.5 million followers, so that was pretty cool. So that's the cartooning part. Thanks. Musically, I sold my guitars, and I bought congas and bongos and other assorted noisemakers. This picture, this was a band of friends of mine. I think it was 1974. We were playing outdoors on Wall Street, which might have been the first concert on Wall Street outside. That's me on the left, behind the congas, wearing the boots that are now, 40 years later, back in style. I wish I still had them. And eventually, I worked my way up to a full drum set. And every time I sit behind the drums, they elate me and confound me and bring me back to that time where I was watching TV and listening to Ringo, just bring the pulse to that music. It's incredible. And like Jeff said, I've worked with Grammy winners. I've recorded in Nashville, played every kind of popular music just about that there is, and I'm currently in 2 bands and subbing in a 3rd. There have been lows, as you can imagine, in this field too. Playing in smoky bars, hauling heavy equipment around, driving for hours, practically playing for nothing, requests for Freebird and Wagon Wheel. As Keith Richards said, and I'm not going to attempt his accent, I've been doing this for 50 years, and I've actually only played music for about 5 of those years. But I tell you, I love it all. And all of this being me has vastly expanded my communities. What started out as exploding planes and scribblings in my chemistry notebook has gotten me fans in over 40 countries. And my cartoons are now distributed to newspapers all across the United States. I've played music at Merlefest, and I've played music in the Swiss Alps. And having lived in the same town for over 40 years, my local community is large and enthusiastic and growing all the time. And in a posthumous tip of the hat to my dad, I'd have to say that most of my bills over the last 30 or 40 years have been paid by my work in the natural foods industry. 401ks, insurance, food on the table, clothes on my back, roof over my head. That adult stuff. So thank you, Dad. Turns out we were both right. What I'd like for you to take away from all this jabber is that transformation most likely will not be some large fracturing of space and time. Short of any traumatic event, transformation is going to slowly creep up on you. It'll climb over the walls you've built, tap you on the shoulder and say something like, hey man, all you had to do was get out of your own way. At least that's how it worked for me. I listened to what my heart and my gut were telling me, and I stepped aside and let them get started on the work of me just being me. And the success that I have enjoyed, I could only have dreamed of when I was drawing those planes and strumming on that ukulele. So my hope is that your transformations will be as fruitful and as joyful. Thank you.